What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some of my favorite quests in The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, which is a video I had actually wanted to make for quite a while, but given the recent release of Oblivion Remastered, it obviously seemed like the good time to do that. But as my regular viewers surely know by now, I'm a huge fan of Oblivion, one of my favorite games, and one of the reasons it is one of my favorite games is that it has a ton of really great quests. Say what you will about a lot of things when it comes to Oblivion in terms of gameplay elements and things like that didn't exactly age well even in the remaster with its attempts to preserve a lot of what the game was previously. But with the remaster's approach to sort of overhauling some of the combat and gameplay elements to allow people to get into it a bit easier, it's going to give people the opportunity to check out a lot of the wonderful content available in Oblivion. And while some of that is fairly well known, I actually wanted to shine a light on at least a couple of quests that I think people don't talk about quite as much, but still really stuck with me for one reason or another. And while sure, one or two of these is definitely going to be one of the more popular ones, those are popular for a reason, but with any luck, this list will give people who are jumping into the game for the first time or simply revisiting it after some years away, a place to jump in and check some things out. To kick things off though, let's get the popular one out of the way. It pretty much always comes up in conversations like this, and this is the Whodunnit quest as part of the Dark Brotherhood guild questline. And the reason it's so popular is because the premise of it is just really compelling and takes a sort of trope and turns it on its head. As it is essentially a murder mystery where you're stuck with a group of people inside a mansion, and the trope here being that someone is obviously going around murdering everyone, but as this is the Dark Brotherhood questline, the sort of twist there is that it's you're the murderer. And in order to get your bonus for this particular quest, what you have to do is find ways to lure the individual characters you are murdering into private locations so nobody knows that you murdered them specifically until the very end, of course. And while that's memorable enough on its own, what's really great about it is all the different ways it can play out, because each of the characters in the mansion with you will sort of react appropriately to the sort of sequence in which you murder everyone else, and you can get a lot of unique interactions out of it that way, including different sort of conclusions based on which character finds out that you were in fact the murderer at the end. So it's a very good quest and a quest line that is full of great quests, which is why it manages to be on pretty much every one of these types of videos or lists that you will see. But from there I want to talk about a few other quests that I think get a little less attention, starting with Where Spirits Have Lease, which is a quest you can pick up in the city of Anvil when you get an offer to buy an abandoned home that is quite large for a paltry sum of money in comparison. Now you quickly find out why, because upon sleeping in this house it turns out that it is in fact haunted, and you have to go about tracking down the guy who sold it to you, finding out what happened, why these spirits are here, and of course, doing something about it. Now, what I like about this more than anything is the fact that it gives you a reason to buy a player home, because you do get to keep this house. But it does that in a way that actually adds something unique to it, whereas pretty much every other house you just go pay for it and then buy furnishings if you want. That's pretty much it. Whereas this quest obviously adds a little more to it, and the conclusion about what is down there and is actually haunting the house I thought was a lot of fun. It even gets some unique animations all the way back in the original, not even just the remaster, of course. And all along the investigation, you can sort of run into more information about the prior occupants and learn all about the cause of this haunting and how it's just this really well thought out and planned microcosm of a story that has nothing to do with anything outside of just this house that you buy, by simply stumbling into that purchase by walking around Anvil, more or less. And I think it really speaks to Oblivion's ability to have cool stuff find you, or you stumble upon really cool quests. And I think the fact that it's just a one-off is really why it stuck with me. But for our third entry, I wanted to mention at least one Daedric quest on this particular list. So Oblivion has ultimately 15 Daedric Prince quests. That is to say, pretty much all of them besides Mehrunes Dagon, who is the game's primary antagonist with his mythic Dawn cult, of course. Now, via a sort of plugin that was added, there is a dungeon with Mehrunes Dagon, so I guess technically he kind of gets one in the end. There are 15 shrines of Daedric princes you can go to and get quests from. While there are plenty of really good ones, like Sanguines is pretty funny as an example, the one that always stuck out to me the most as incredibly interesting, let's say, is the one for Molag Bal, actually. Because once you find his shrine and provide the appropriate offering to speak with the guy, he gives you a singularly distasteful task of going and finding a very honorable, good person in the form of a man who lost his wife recently in a town nearby, and your goal is to corrupt him and damn his soul to Molag Bal by getting him to kill you with a mace that you are provided for this quest. Now, first, you gotta find the guy, which is easy enough. You just go to the town you're directed to and then ask around until people point you towards his cabin, not that far away. But once you get to his cabin, you may just well notice that he's not inclined to actually attack you because he is, in fact, a good person. So even if you attack him first, he won't actually do anything. But if you do a little investigation, you can find out that this guy's wife passed recently and that he goes to visit her grave regularly. And if you wait then until he travels to her grave only to attack him there, you can finally push him over the edge by antagonizing him in this sort of sacred place in his mind, and you can get him to kill you with this mace. And then Molag Bal resurrects you after you have, in fact, condemned this man to unfathomable torture after the fact, and your reward for all that is, of course, a fancy mace, the Mace of Molag Bal, one of the many Daedric artifacts you can get your hands on, and considering that I rarely even use builds that actually use maces, for me it's functionally useless. Did that just for the love of the game. But in all seriousness, even when I had played through Oblivion all the way back as a teenager, that quest always stood out to me as particularly dark given the subject matter. But we are not done yet, because fourth on the list we actually have a quest from the Fighters Guild. Now, just by the name alone, you would probably be forgiven for assuming that the Fighters Guild is a relatively vanilla storyline that isn't going to be terribly interesting. But you'd be wrong. Oblivion's Fighters Guild actually has a really good quest line involving their sort of rivalry with a mercenary company known as the Blackwood Company. You see, the Fighters Guild in Oblivion is having some trouble caused by losing a lot of their work, pretty much all of it, to the Blackwood Company, who seems to be undercutting them using what is surely unscrupulous methods. And so eventually in that quest line, in order to investigate what it is they are actually doing, you get sent sort of undercover in a quest called Infiltration. You essentially pose as a new recruit for the Blackwood Company, who gives you a little bit of prep work before sending you out on a job. The job being to clear out a village of some goblins that have overtaken it. But the thing is, if you pay any attention at all to the sequence of events leading up to this, you'll notice almost immediately that this is a very strange occurrence, frankly. And after the deed is done, you'll wake up not all that long after, only to realize that you have in fact massacred a village of innocent people because what the Blackwood Company did was drug your character up on hist sap, which caused you to think the village was overrun by goblins, but really it was just innocent villagers. And that's the kind of thing the Blackwood Company gets up to. So while it might seem a little boring at first, do yourself a favor and make sure you play through the Fighters Guild. But that does finally bring us to our final entry, which just so happens to be the Order of the Virtuous Blood. You see, in Oblivion, you can not only become a vampire if you want to, you can also choose to become a formal vampire hunter in a way, provided you make the right choice, because this is a quest that actually has some choice and consequence to it. There is a right and wrong answer here that you'll have to puzzle out on your own, and while admittedly it's not a terribly difficult thing to figure out, the game will mark the quest as completed either which way you go. But basically, by spending some time in the Temple District after gaining a little bit of fame, you'll eventually be contacted to help out a sort of order of vampire hunters, the Order of the Virtuous Blood. And it turns out they're having a problem with someone they believe is a vampire. But it quickly becomes a sort of case of who do you believe in this situation, because you're ultimately given a choice between hunting down one of two potential vampires. But assuming that you choose correctly, you'll get two really fantastic rewards, the first of which is the Ring of Sunfire, which is a really good ring, especially in the early game, as it has a reflect spell enchantment and can even resist disease for you, which honestly diseases can be pretty annoying in Oblivion. So it's a very good ring, especially in the early game before you can do those things yourself. In addition to this though, there's two other sort of side little benefits. They kind of go hand in hand though. One, you actually get to join the Order of the Virtuous Blood as a sort of vampire hunter, an honorary one at least. Now, unlike the other guild quest lines and factions, this really isn't much of a big deal, but it does provide one crucial benefit, and that is being able to sell vampire dust for 250 gold a pop, And considering how many vampires you might be fighting down the line, that is a not insignificant amount of cash. But what's really interesting, actually, isn't so much this quest on its own, but rather something that gets revealed later in Skyrim, I believe, actually, in that there is a sort of order of vampires in the Cyrodiil area that tries to infiltrate high-ranking civilian positions, etc., and kind of manipulate people to their own ends to make their life easier, while, of course, influencing policy and things like that to keep themselves safe. And while that's not really an official thing that ever gets explored, mind you, it immediately made me think of this quest all the way back in Oblivion and how some of this stuff can kind of be seen happening in the background of everything else in terms of major events. But I think that's as good a place as any to start wrapping up this particular video, and the thing I want to leave you guys with is that realistically this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are in fact a whole host of really great Oblivion quests that I didn't mention here, but these are just some of my favorites, and frankly I'd love to hear about yours, so by all means drop them down in the comments section below. But as for this video, that's pretty much going to wrap it up, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.